My name is Will Falk. I'm a writer and a lawyer, and I have been at Thacker Pass since January 15th. It was a day that the Bureau of Land Management issued their final authorization for the Thacker Pass open pit lithium mine. This lithium mine would destroy the area that I'm standing in right now. It would destroy close to 18,000 acres of land here in beautiful northern Nevada. I'm standing in some of the best old growth sagebrush habitat left on Earth. I'm standing in an area that represents some of the best sage grouse habitat left on Earth. Sage grouse are a species that have been decimated since Europeans invaded this land. Their numbers are down between 97 and 99%. This is also a place where water will be polluted, where air will be poisoned, where the land will be destroyed, and both the human and non-human communities that depend upon air, water, and land will be harmed by this project if we allow it to go through. This land is in the ancestral homelands of the Paiute and Shoshone people. The closest reservation is the Fort McDermott Paiute and Shoshone Reservation. They are people that are very connected to the camp and have been deeply involved in supporting the camp. In fact, the Protect Thacker Pass camp couldn't happen without the Fort McDermott tribal folks that are supporting us.
Hallowed, no Duranda, no Atsak, Wadakwa, Winuwa. So we're out here at Pee-He-Mu'huh, and we're here to protect Pee-He-Mu'huh, or better known as Thacker Pass. And so why I'm out here is because this place needs to be protected. It needs to be saved because, first of all, it's a very, very beautiful place, you know, and then on top of that, it's my ancestral homelands. If they were to come out here and start constructing and excavating burial and cultural sites, that would really, you know, affect me and this place and the sacredness and our people. I actually had an elder ask somebody, BLM, how are they going to replace the cultural and spiritual side of Pee-He-Mu'huh? How are you know, going to replace those taken people and their spirits and the things that they were buried with? How do you replace that? And the gentleman, he said, there's no way to replace it. And so it's just not fair to me that, you know, other people can have their burial sites and their homelands not be disturbed and left alone. And for Native American all around the country, and especially here, it's just known as another historical site that they're able to just destruct and, you know, use lithium as an excuse and a monetary purpose and all this other stuff. But it's really upsetting. You know, we had a prayer ceremony today, and there was all this wind, and like wind for us in our culture is like a spirit in itself. And to me, that was a sign. When people were singing, the wind was outrageous and it kept, you know, blowing things over. And like, to me, that made me feel as if they were hearing us, that they were proud that we were here. And so when they come here to threaten this place, it's really upsetting. And it's not just destructing this place. It's threatening like this whole culture, the whole next generation's ability to learn about this place, about the places around it. And it just goes back, it goes back down to just, you know, how are we going to teach the next generation? Like, how is that language going to be translated from, is Pee-He-Mu'huh, is that story going to be kept, you know? And so we see just unfairness, it feels like, and just this greenwashing of lithium. And we've seen it in the indigenous people down in Argentina and Chile and what they did to their people and their culture. And it needs to stop. Absolutely, it needs to stop. And I'm really hoping that we get people out here and we get more support and more people standing with us in solidarity, because that's important. Because next time when they might need help, but those indigenous people might need help, we'll be there because we know how it feels, and we're not all separate. We're here as one big tribe on this continent. So we have to stick together, and it just comes back down to the respect of Mother Earth. And we need to start listening, because if we don't, climate change is just continuing to get worse, and it's going to be really catastrophic. And we can see that with fires and weather patterns changing and heat and drought and things like that. But I think there's going to be a huge cultural change, and I think protecting Pee-He-Mu'huh is just the start of it.
My name is Edward Bartell. In terms of air quality, I have big concerns about what is being proposed. They are proposing to get sulfur from oil refineries, where they will get an enormous amount of, in phase 2, roughly 680,000 tons of sulfur a day. I believe that works out to roughly 1,900 tons every single day. They will get from oil refineries and take it out in our community and burn it. The very reason it is being removed at the oil refineries is so we don't burn it. So they will burn that sulfur, and then they will convert that sulfur as it's burned into sulfuric acid. And that sulfuric acid is going to be mixed with the ore. And ultimately, the waste product from all of this imported sulfur is going to be dumped on the tailings pile. They claim they are going to scrub the as they burn it, but the data we've seen indicates it would be exceedingly difficult for them to meet the levels that they're claiming they're going to meet. So we're very concerned that what the air quality impacts will be and how much is actually going to get released, and is the government agencies going to consider all sources of release. And for example, as all of these trucks come in to load and offload this, we're talking about roughly 75 semi-trailers every single day. They're going to haul doubles, but they have to connect each one, and so they're as they connect and disconnect, there's obviously concern about potential release there, and release in storage and various other things we want to make sure is fully considered and in total impact. They will also have enormous amount of emissions just in doing the mine site in terms of all the vehicles. Something was very frustrating to me early on. There was assertions this was going to be a carbon neutral mine, and obviously all of these semis that are running up and down the road hauling 680,000 tons of sulfur on top of various other commodities or reagents that will be used at the mine, all of that emits carbon. So in the EIS, I challenged them on this point, and they eventually acknowledged that the carbon neutral was a long-term goal, and they're actually going to release about 150,000 tons of carbon emissions every year, and that works out to well over 2 tons of carbon emissions for every ton of lithium produced. So we're very concerned about this process, and it's my understanding that they've never ever used this process to extract lithium out of clay previously on a commercial scale. So we feel we're kind of being the guinea pig for this process.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Doris Antonio. My maiden name, last name is Sam, and I come from the Fort McDermott Western Shoshone Indian Reservation. I am the great-granddaughter of Chief Sam, who was massacred at Pee-He-Mu'huh. We do not want this mine out at Thacker Pass, Pee-He Mu'huh. It's really sad to see my elders cry. There was a massacre that happened there by the Pit River Indians. The men folks went out hunting for buffalo, and when they returned back home, their wives, their children, their family were killed. They were cut open. Their stomachs were taken out, and they were slayed all over the sagebrush. And as the day went by, the gut started smelling like it was spoiled, like it was rotten. So when the men returned home at night, it was given that name Peehee Mu'huh, and Peehee means rotten, Mu'huh means moon. Another massacre that happened there by the soldiers. They were sat up. They seen this fire, the smoke, and they went across the valley from over these mountains here, and they went across towards it's called Centennial Rock, and it was in the early morning hours where they massacred the Indians again that were there. They massacred them. There was 2 little boys that a soldier had taken and took them in as their own, and my great-great-grandfather, Sam, jumped on his horse, and he escaped out towards Disaster Peak over that way. There was only 3 survivors that we know that escaped that massacre. It saddens me. It, we talked about it. When I first heard about it, when I went to Peehee Mu'huh, I felt the spirits there. I felt it strong. I knew that there was a connection there, and I felt that in my heart that, I had to do something about it. I, tried to coordinate a horse run from Disaster Peak over to Peehee Mu'huh, and it's strong with me, and it saddens me to think that there was this massacre that happened to babies, to elders, to the children that they didn't get to see a lot of things. And I'm glad that my great-great-grandfather spoke up about it. I'm glad that he was interviewed, and I'm happy that the documents are there, but it also saddens me that the judge isn't listening to these stories, to my great-great-grandfather's interview. It saddens me. It breaks my heart to know that there are spirits out there at Peehee Mu'huh. And in our tradition, it's like, when you're killed somewhere, your spirit remains there. And I truly believe that they are out there, and they watch over us when we're there. It's not just at Peehee Mu'huh, it's between there and Disaster Peak. Disaster Peak is, it's a spiritual mountain. It's a spiritual mountain, and I noticed when I went out there, they're, starting to dig around it, and, that really hurts me too, because it means a lot to us. I believe the tribes were never notified. I myself didn't know about it. I knew there was a mine coming nearby, but I didn't know it was a lithium mine. As a matter of fact, I was pretty happy about it, that there was a mine coming nearby, that, my people are going to have jobs, they're going to work and things. But the beginning of the year, my brother calls and tells me that there's a protest going on in Nevada. I really didn't know what it was about. I attended the protest, and I listened, and I felt pretty ashamed to, be happy that there was this mine coming nearby. When I learned more about this lithium mine, the harm that it's going to bring. When we sit in the Native American church, we sit here on Mother Earth, and we pray. We pray to the water. To us, water is life. You know, we breathe the air, and air is life too. And with this lithium mine coming here, it's gonna come here to our reservation. The wind's always blowing this way when we don't want that. This mountain behind me, it's called Red Mountain. Our committee for the Thacker Pass got the name from this mountain behind me. In the summertime, the weeds, they turn red, giving it a red effect. They said there's chiefs on that mountain. And it's our committee, it's called Atsakorakwawit Nua, meaning the people of Red Mountain. We've been protecting Thacker Pass, and we have been standing up.
Hey everyone, it's Jen. I'm up here at Thacker Pass, and it's a little windy and cold, but gorgeous. Do you see this beauty? I mean, this is what we're protecting, right? So, I just wanted to show a little fact here. As we're getting ready for this air hearing and water hearing that's coming up. The air hearing is November 18th. So let me show this. You see these trucks? That, my friends, is from atmospheric river system, which I think many of us are aware of, especially here in Nevada. I know in California too. It's when you see it on the satellite, it literally looks like a river in the sky. I always love when I come to film up here in Nevada and up at Thacker how the wind picks up. But I just thought I come and show you this because it's a very good point of why we need this forest of sagebrush. I'm going to walk over here and show off some of this beautiful sage and rabbit bush, and there's so many other plants here that we need to protect. There's medicine in these forests that we need to protect, and the Paiute Shoshone have been using for years. That potatoes and onion, dosa for medicine. I mean, a lot of us would probably call it a garden. You know, we garden at home. This is what the Paiutes used when they were here, and this is their territory. And they deserve for us to protect it. But this beautiful sage, you see it? She's all around us. This beautiful sage. See that? Right there, the Montana mountains. There goes that sun. We need to preserve it. And this mountain that I'm standing on right now is going to be blown up if we did not protect it. And why I want to bring up these two stories with atmospheric river systems, maybe I'll move into the tent and talk more. Okay, I moved to the car because it's much quieter here because of the wind. But why I was showing you the erosion from the trucks that got stuck up here at Thacker or Pee-He-Moo-Huh, I do want to mention that because I'm saying the English name of Thacker Pass because that is what it is recognized by a federal government. But I also want to recognize the native name, and I'm going to take a moment for that. Pee-He-Moo-Huh is the native name. That is what the Paiute and the Shoshone community calls it here, because this is Paiute territory, and it needs to be recognized by its native name. And they have been protecting this land and preserving Thacker Pass, and their plant medicine is there. And when I say plant medicine, as I mentioned earlier, I think there's a disconnection there. You know, we've heard of bee gardens, right? We've heard of medicine gardens. You know, a lot of people forget, like aspirin, that's willow bark. If you go and look on the back of aspirin, you will see willow bark. That it comes from plants. And we need to preserve those plants, you know. Not everything was always made out of chemicals or human made, you know. And a lot of people are understanding this again and getting back to nature, and we need to preserve that. And this really became evident with this reservation and this Paiute community when COVID hit here in Nevada. This community was hit highest out of all of the communities in Humboldt County. It was, I believe, 60% per capita, the highest per capita in the whole state got COVID. And when you drive from Fort McDermott Reservation to Winnemucca, it is about an hour 25-minute drive. And I'll just tell you plainly, there's not a really good reputation with the Winnemucca Hospital, not only with the tribal community, but also with the surrounding areas in Orovada and Kings River Valley. And I've heard it from several people. So they actually trust the Elko Hospital, Idaho Hospital, or Reno. And so when COVID was hitting here, they turned to their plant medicine. And it's what saved many of them. And to think that we would just destroy it for our own selfish needs. And it is selfish. Because we're talking about energy here. Like how long we want to keep our lights on. And, you know, people say, well, I can't survive without it. Or we've never lived without it. That's not true. Think about that. Our ancestors have lived without electricity. You know, and that word ancestors has come up a lot with the work I've been doing out here. You know, the word indigenous means native to the land. And I'm going to call out the white community, and I'm going to remind us that we're all indigenous to the land. We're not indigenous to this land, but we're indigenous to some part of this land, somewhere on this planet. And your ancestors, your relatives, had songs too. They protected the earth. It was lost. It was stolen. It was forgotten. For whatever reason, we have been disconnected. And there's legends all around this world, no matter what indigenous community you go meet. And it's also often known as the medicine wheel. That we need to wake up. You see the colors on the medicine wheel often as black, red, yellow, and white. The white part of that medicine wheel has forgotten. And we need to wake up. It is time to take care of this planet. If you are sitting there and you are thinking that, well, my car will save this planet if I have an electric car, I've had to take a real reality check on that too. I've had to realize that that is not the answer. We have come up with technologies and we have come up with solutions, but when we sit here and we think about it, you know, they come up with this lithium solution, and Nevada has 25% of the world's lithium. A state, a territory that belongs to mainly the Paiute, Shoshone, and Washoe tribe. And they weren't even consulted on this. And then you learn that it's not really green. It's not a green solution. The sulfur they're going to need to extract the lithium out of the clay. So we don't have hard rock mining. This will be clay mining. So they will have to burn it out of the clay, which will use sulfur. So they're bringing the sulfur from oil refineries. That means we still need the fossil fuel industry. Let that sit in. The sulfur that they are bringing here right now has been mentioned from the same place that Line 3 has been fighting. The tar sands. And that sulfur is so toxic that Canada is not burning it. But we've had enough rollbacks with our EPA that they can burn it here. So they're going to put it in, they mix it with dry air, and then it goes into the second stage where they add more oxygen. And then the third stage is where they add water and all the other ingredients, and then it makes the sulfuric acid. And that sulfuric acid then goes into that clay, and then it pulls that lithium out. Now, the company that has made the scrubber for when the emissions are going out from this factory is DuPont. I want you to do research on DuPont. You'll probably see a movie that comes up that you should watch if you want to see what they've done to communities and how they lie. But they are not a good company. Just look in the EPA and see how many times they've been sued for lying. And I sat in with a lot of other concerned citizens here in Nevada, and they told all of us that they could guarantee that their scrubber would keep out 97% of the emissions. Guarantee it. Which is interesting because one of the highest scrubbers, like top of the line, I think the highest they can get is 70%. I asked the woman who designed it herself, she told me, how she got to those numbers, and she said she could prove it to me by sending paperwork. I provided the email to her and she still has not sent those facts to me. 97% of the emissions would be kept back, she said. That's an awful big lie when you're talking about children's lives. 7 generations forward. This mine with Thacker Pass Pee-He-Moo-Huh is 50 years for one setting, but now they just expanded it, and it could be a 100-year mine. We're not just talking about our generation. We're talking about up to 7 generations in front of us. That's grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Will we be leaving anything for them? Am I the only one sitting here thinking that scientists have been warning us that we only have about 10 to 15 years to control what carbon is doing to this planet and what emissions are doing? And now I'm finding out that the emissions that are going to be coming from the sulfuric acid plant, even with that scrubber, is about 5,800 tons of sulfuric acid a day. That's per plant, by the way. And just with Pee-He-Moo-Huh alone, that's 2 plants at minimum. The next one, Jubilee, that Australia wants to do, that is part McDermott, Nevada, and the rest Oregon, looks like there'll be a minimum of 4. That's all right here in this one caldera. And they're looking at 8,000 claims across Nevada right now. Can you imagine that many sulfuric acid plants here in Nevada just contaminating our air, let alone the water? The little water that we have to begin with. And our state is fine with pulling this up to be the rest of this country and maybe this world's supplier just because we have 25% of the world's lithium? Is it worth doing that for the future generations? To our planet? To Mother Earth? Is that really the solution? Is anyone stopping for a second? From all the things we have learned from our past mistakes with oil refineries, gas, coal, we should be learning about our mistakes and slowing down, not rushing into it, and asking these questions before we make a decision like this. My children, 2 of them have asthma. But my children are a part of the 8.6% of this country who has asthma. But if you add Native Americans to that, Native American children are at 13.6% who have asthma or heart-related issues. And this is going to be right in front of their reservation. Then the reason I showed you that deep cuts into the earth with water, and the tribal members had to push cars out, and that was from one atmospheric river system. I want you to imagine if all that sagebrush, which is a forest, by the way, this sagebrush is older than most of those redwoods and sequoias we've been trying to protect from the fires. It's an ecosystem, but we won't get into that right now. But let's imagine that's gone. When these atmospheric river systems that are getting worse year by year come through, as we're putting more emissions in the air, and again, scientists are estimating that even if we get 25 million EV cars, electric vehicles on the roads, it's only going to reduce our emissions by 6%. We need more math on that before we get the final decision on that. But mining is also going to raise that emissions if we're hitting it hard. But let's move on from that for a second. Let's get back to the sagebrush. These atmospheric river systems come through this community, and it pours like it did. That was only for 1 or 2 days. And that sagebrush is not here to capture all of that water through those roots. What do you think is going to happen to that valley down there? It's a flood. Now they might be able to create a dam, and might even help the sulfuric acid plant. But is it going to help the people? With that sulfuric acid in the air, adding acid to the rain that already has acid in it. Rain is already acidic to begin with. Then you add sulfuric acid to the air and nitrates from the heavy diesel trucks. Then we find out that one of the biggest cyanide plant is in Winnemucca. So imagine cyanide, sulfuric acid, nitrate oxides coming from big, heavy-duty diesel trucks coming up and down that aren't used to being in this area to move the sulfur and move the lithium in and out of this area. What is that going to do to this little community in this area, in the air? We don't know, because we don't have EPA certified huge air monitoring systems. And unfortunately, the mining industry has gotten away with this for a long time. They have said that we passed our air permits. Have you? Off of what air monitoring systems? Because they actually go off of the ones that are pretty far away, and that doesn't actually show what's going on in the area. So we have to stand together, and we need to bring the facts, and we have to show up to this air hearing on November 18th. And we need to think about what we are setting up for the next 7 generations. Indigenous cultures, all indigenous cultures, not just from this land, but other lands, have that in common from original communities, is when they made decisions was not just how it's going to affect us right now, but how is this going to affect the next 7 generations? And I don't know, is it just me who's sitting here thinking, aren't scientists telling us that we only have 10 to 15 years to correct this? And why do they keep saying that this is the solution, when we're hearing now that no, the mining industry is going to be emitting more emissions in the air, and we don't know the numbers. We're not getting the math. They're hiding a lot from us. And we deserve to know that as the American people. All American people not just certain communities, not just the top 1%ers. All. And I want to know, my children have asthma. The people I love in these communities have heart issues, lung issues. I'm part of a new community of long haulers from COVID. I have mild COPD from what that virus did to my lungs. There are elders on this reservation from Fort McDermott who went through similar experiences that I did with COVID. They have problems breathing. The top oxygen they can reach is 93 now. And they don't know the difference because doctors don't explain it to them. That is not a high number. And what's going to happen when the air is worse? We're already dealing with horrible fire seasons. What's going to happen when the smoke combines with that? I want answers. They deserve answers. We all deserve answers. And Nevada doesn't need to become the wasteland for this. These are my thoughts. And I wanted to share them with you. And I thank you for your time.